see it's temporarily just running late, so I'll hold down the fort until he gets here. And I guess we can start by introducing ourselves for the public at large. I'm Dave Turner, Vice Chair.
I'm Sonia Fry, Chair of the CPRC Committee as well.
I'm Amy Samara. I'm a commissioner and a member of the Human Trafficking Task Force and the Community Discovery Committee.
Abdul Majidi.
Yalom Bennett, Commissioner.
Alan Lazo, Commissioner. Jeff Sudley, staff.
And Christine stepped out for a moment. So just take a run through of the meeting minutes and agenda. Let us know if there's anything that you think should be added or any corrections that should be made in the minutes. Everything good? Anybody see any updates that need to be added for these minutes? Any amendments to the agenda?
The meeting minutes on page 3, I guess, which is the last one, it's like the very bottom. It says Alan Lazo mentioned homeless bill of rights in Sisters, Oregon, scheduled for March 9th. I think that should be, it's at Sisters, as opposed to the city of Sisters, Oregon. Sisters of the Road Cafe.
That's Sisters of the Road Cafe.
Yeah. Yeah. That looks like it's Sisters, Oregon place.
And that's in Sisters?
Sisters of the Road is
Pardon?
organizing civil rights bill.
Homeless, yeah, they're down here in Northwest on Davis and Fifth.
Okay. So you were in Sisters and you didn't call? No, I'm kidding.
No, I was,
I got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was on the road to Sisters, is that, no, wait.
Thank you, Alan. Anything else? All right. And next on the agenda is Mr. Dante James.
Well, you want to, we have to make a.
Oh, we have to make a.
You have to vote.
Roll call?
Well, we don't have a forum for
We do with Christine.
Roll call, phone, Guard.
You want to come back to that after Dante?
Yeah. we can do
I
that.
got something about the agenda first, modification.
Okay.
If of mine. One in number 9, item number 9. Joint Terrorism Task Force, actually it's not Joint Terrorism Task Force, update committee, it's human trafficking. And also.
Well, I know Joint Terrorism Task Force is
It's a different.
a subject that we're going to discuss at that time, but
Actually, what I'm going to suggest to the table, that topic is very important. We have 550 to 615 for all these committees to make updates. I would suggest it should be an item in the agenda that says GTTF on its own standing item instead of part of the update. It's not an update, it's a discussion. That makes sense?
I'm sorry, pardon?
The committee is missing from there, which I think it is the human trafficking, which is not the one that says Joint Terrorism Task Force.
Okay.
But what I'm suggesting is that GTTF, that we were talking, emailing each other about to update, to discuss, since we're going to discuss, it needs to be an item standing alone item in the agenda and giving it enough time to have a discussion.
How does everyone else feel about that?
I'm not sure how we can do that with time, but
Can we just separate it? Can we just put it briefly after fluoride discussion before the updates? Like just separate it out? Just have it.
I have something then. Christine's on the phone right now with somebody because the fluoride update, she wasn't prepared to talk about it. And she feels pretty strongly that we need to have maybe either that moved or something. So maybe if we have fluoride discussion at this meeting.
Have the Joint Terrorism Task Force talk replace that?
well, we have folks here making public comment on
On
fluoride,
fluoride.
so
Okay.
we've already posted the agenda with that, so.
So no.
So maybe we abbreviate the fluoride discussion a little bit and move JTTF up and give that 10 minutes, each 10 minutes instead of 20 for fluoride. That work?
I think that will work.
And then we can, and then with the understanding that we might talk about fluoride on another agenda. I think the issue is that fluoride might go on the ballot in May.
It is on
We need to talk about it.
Yes.
May.
I
May
mean-
3rd is the first time it might become an issue.
Coming short, when ballots go out, so that's the issue.
So it needs to happen, you know.
But,
Okay.
we can do that.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just, when Kyle steps in, we'll just have to remind him when he has to go that agenda.
Okay.
Who's right in here?
Alrighty. We do have form now, so we, do you want to take us, did you get a chance to look at the minutes?
Yeah,
Okay. Which means approval of the agenda minutes. We had when you're out, we talked about, Abdul brought up that we separate out joint tourism task force, and you suggest that we move it slightly after chloride discussion, maybe split that 10 and then bring back the fluoride discussion next month as well.
Are we gonna do fluoride discussion today, or are we
Yes.
gonna do it next?
Yes, we're just shortening it a bit.
Do we really feel like I mean, I had no idea we were
Well,
gonna talk about.
Jeff mentioned you were out, and that's already only been in there, our people here, we are going to make a lot of that. We simply have to.
Yeah, I asked for it to be moved to the next meeting, but the vote was up in May.
Okay. I just think it's important that HRC gets a 360 view, since we're not really, any of us working in that area. If we're gonna hear on highly politicized topic,
I support.
I think that that would be a little irresponsible not to do our homework beforehand and have everybody at the table to educate us.
Well, we're not saying that there won't be an additional discussion about it, we're saying that this is what we
Before the
agreed
vote.
today, and there'll be more discussion on the agenda in April.
And I don't think there's no
I mean,
vote on
May.
that, I think it's just a discussion.
Not from HRC, but from
Vote, please.
From what committee?
community.
Oh.
I kind of, but I think Christine is right on, it's like for example, it cannot be equipped to discuss even my opinion or further in it, on my own very much as I'm not indicated or informed. That's, but actually here, somebody to inform us more, so we can make a decision on.
It would just
Discussion
be
with
good
you.
to have both sides of the coin. I mean, I'm not gonna argue either way, but I think it's responsible to have both sides of the coin for something so political. I called the initiative that's for fluoridation to see if they can pass something down and make public comment, and we're gonna see. I'm sure of this.
Okay.
So perhaps, it sounds to me as if that item on the agenda could involve an action plan as to how do we get this body informed, or do we want to make a statement about it?
For purposes of time though, I mean, we just have, we have a couple presentations today, so we just have to decide now if it is okay. We have this brief discussion today, and we can continue to have it next month.
And if I reflect correctly from the executive committee, that we're not certain that this is an issue that the Human Rights Commission should weigh in on one way or another, and so the discussion is around whether it's appropriate for the Human Rights Commission to take a position on this.
Right. And also, just so the commissioners know, and I know we're all busy, and we all have a lot of things going on, the agenda for the most part is posted a week before the meeting on the website. There have been a couple of changes here and there, but the bulk of the proposed agenda is available a week before, just so you know.
Okay. Right. So can we approve the agenda with amendments?
Yeah, and I have one more thing to add.
Okay.
Was there something about, policy update?
Under committee there is.
Public Policy Committee?
Oh,
Right.
thought it was just a general policy that we would do, but that's probably where.
If there's something that you want to add, then you can do it under that.
And again, I could just go back to a week out, when the agenda goes up would be a great time to hear. So obviously we can't do it all the time, but as much as you can, because we've had to make, this is the third agenda we've had, so. Thanks. All right. So is there a motion for approving the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda with the amendment of setting time following, in between the fluoridation and committee leave. So I move that we approve the agenda with the amendment that we move the joint terrorism task force topic listed under updates up between the committee and liaison updates and the fluoridation session.
A second.
Yes.
No? Call for a vote?
All in favor?
All
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, great. Next up, Mr. Dante James with the OAHR update.
We didn't approve the minutes.
And we didn't approve it.
Sorry.
Okay. I thought we were doing well. Okay.
So you call for a motion for?
Motion to approve the minutes, March 6th. Second.
Vote, yay?
Yay.
Nay? Abstention? Okay. There we go.
Thank you.
Jeff, is it okay to call Mr. Dante James?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right.
I just wanted to hear my name said 3 times. I'll save you some time because I think I'll be quick unless you have a lot of questions. I really just, it's just, I think it's helpful to have 5 minutes so I can give you just a brief update on what we're doing. Most specifically, I think as it relates to you in terms of appointments, I'm not sure if, excuse me, you were aware. I did have some conversations with council, and council is fine with doing the appointments for the, I think it's the 6 of you who are up or were up before it became a 6-month appointment, to just go to consent agenda for all of those for the full term. So.
That happened today.
Was it okay?
It is.
Because I put that on, let them know it was coming, so it shouldn't have been an issue whatsoever. Otherwise,
Thank you for that.
yes, please. Otherwise, we're just doing what we do. I know I saw it down here in the budget question conversation. I'll wait and see if I can respond to that. And we're, in terms of kind of ongoing citywide issues, everybody's aware of the arts tax. I will tell you that there have been conversations that I've had with the Revenue Bureau about the arts tax from a while back in terms of outreach and information going to various communities, specifically concern about English as a second language and people who do not have access to web access, etc. They are very aware of those issues and concerns. And my most important issue was not that much on the front end, but ensuring that we don't have folks who are ending up in collections on the back end for whatever reason, private collections. And so that's going to be a conversation. It's been a conversation, and it's going to be, I think, something that will be rectified about how that will or will not happen, so that the folks that we've described who are probably at risk for being not in compliance will be much less at risk for any collection activity in that regard. So that's, I guess, the major piece of kind of citywide activity going on. Friday is our final budget presentations to City Council. It's designed for the Community Budget Office to come and make their presentation about what they think about our budget request. Essentially, they're just gonna come and say, don't provide the 10% add back that we've asked for. And I think that's probably what's gonna be said for every bureau in the city because of the budget difficulty. So I expect that will be the budget office's presentation. Some of that add back money was specifically for HRC, so I don't expect that we'll get that. But I think we can still massage and make some adjustments as we need to make things happen. So that's Friday at 1 o'clock. If you have any desire to come to our 15 minutes of fame.
Is it possible for some bureaus to get add back and others not to?
Yes.
And I think it's possible also that some of your add backs are being put back in and not others. So it's going to be the council's discretion.
Okay. The council has complete discretion on how they want to deal with the budget.
I have a quick question on the arts grants, but I can wait if we're still on. No? Could you just clarify the difference that you see between the private collections and the public collections? I don't know just how that would kind of singled out the private.
Because once it's sent out to a private collection agency, the city's done. And so if someone is not compliant, the second deadline is October 15th. So October 20th, if someone is not compliant, but it has not been sent to a private collection, I can still come in and say, actually, I'm exempt, and here's my paperwork, and the city could actually waive any fees, additional fees, and demonstrate that you're exempt. Once it goes to private collection, even if the city waives whatever fees, private collection is private collection, and you're just gonna pay those, you're gonna pay whatever that may be.
There's also an additional fee that they charge if they send it to collection, at least in other revenue programs they will. So, yeah, and obviously this arts tax thing is a bit of a mess, so I appreciate you guys are involved in this. One suggestion I would make is that they should put into writing this initial year because of the problems they've had. They already extended the payment deadline. First, some policies around waiving penalties and other things that are happening around the payment dates. And I think it'd be hard for them to do, or put in place a voluntary compliance program. So they're having some real issues around outreach.
Yes.
So,
And the Bureau, and to be, I guess, fair and balanced, the Bureau is in some sense hamstrung because of its dollar limit and what it can spend to address this, because it's only allowed to spend 5% of what it's expected to collect the first year, which is like about $500,000. And so they are trying to do this underneath that budget constraint, which is why they've done it with the first postcard and then another mailing that went out, I think, Friday. And so they're trying to do this in waves, in different ways. My comment was, you get a postcard and all it says is pay your tax and here's a website. That's not really helpful to a whole lot of people. And so they recognize some of the pitfalls that they've created or that's been created by the way this has been instituted. And so I think there will be some additional fixes. I don't know to what extent they can modify it because it was a vote. It was a vote of the people. So I don't know to what extent they can modify it. I haven't had that level of conversation yet, but and they're hesitant to say anything about voluntary this or non-compliance. We're not going to collect because they won't get any money. So that's not going to happen. I can guarantee you that's not going to happen. So.
They can have a policy in place. They have it in other places in their programs or compliance and penalty relief. I just don't know if they do with this.
You can, you can, yes, whether you're exempt or not, you could say, my 12-year-old didn't read this thing, I can't read English, my 12-year-old didn't read it until after the deadline, here's my money, can the fees be waived, or any penalties be waived, and the answer is yes. So you can do that, there's a process. Good. Thanks.
Next up on the agenda, Shoshana Oppenheim, regarding the Title VI presentation. Some of you were here last month, and I'm just continuing from that. Thank you, Shoshana.
Absolutely. And I apologize, I know that Danita's heard my presentation. I think this is going on 4 times. Yeah, 5 is going to be the lucky number, I'm sure. So, I'm here today. I met with Jeff and Kyle on the phone a couple of weeks ago. And we talked a little bit about what would be helpful for the commission to hear about the Title VI plan. So he asked me to bring a summary inside of your handout. There is a little outline of the Title VI plan, the elements that you'll see in the Title VI plan. I'm sorry, I have more.
We got it, we got it.
Yep. So that's on the inside, so that's basically an outline of the Title VI plan. And then the handout is kind of more of an overview. It lets you know how the Title VI plan fits into our other policies of the City of Portland, following up on the Portland plan, following up on some work that was done with the Racial Equity Strategy Guide. It's one of the elements that's in the Office of Equities work plan. So really bringing to the forefront the other plans that have been leading up to adopting the Title VI plan. And what I tried to capture on the inside of the handout is really how this plan is going to advance the policies of equity and what my responsibilities as the program manager is going to be. So my predecessor worked on both Title VI and ADA, but the Title VI program wasn't really developed. So I'll be working through developing the Title VI program as well. So this kind of lays out some of my work plan, how you can be involved. And of course, if you would like to download the full plan, I've kind of stopped printing it out because I'm trying to be a good steward. So it's available online, and I'm happy to provide you a printed copy if you'd like to send it to me. So hesitate to ask. So I wanted to make sure that I was available to answer any questions that the commission had. And I also wanted to talk to you about the potential, the complaint procedure and how the complaint procedure is going to be structured. What I'm handing out right now is a copy of how the ADA, and I apologize if I don't have any copies. You might have to share. How the ADA complaint procedure is structured. Last week, or last month when I was here, there were some questions about how the complaint procedure was going to be provided, if it was going to be provided in the language of the person that is filing the complaint. So this is how the ADA complaint procedure is structured. My inclination is to structure the Title VI complaint similar to the ADA complaint procedure. I would welcome your feedback as to if you think that this complaint procedure is something that you would support. There's also the a more, I guess, generous complaint procedure that has been adopted by the Bureau of Transportation, which gives staff significantly more time to resolve complaints. All complaints need to be resolved within 180 days by federal law. So with that constraint, I'm interested in knowing how you would like to make the complaint procedure as accessible to people and responsive to people as possible.
Are you asking that question now?
That's sure. I mean, if there's a possibility to have conversation about that, if there's a, opportunity for later dialogue, I'm of course available for that. But I wanted to make sure that you knew more about what the Title VI plan has to offer and how it's going to be developed.
So I have a question. Can you say more about how that Bureau ADA coordinator is made public and available?
on the city website is a list of all of the ADA coordinators. There's also, all of them also provided to the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, who runs the Information and Referral Desk. So if there's a call made to the city, and I'd like to complain about Bureau of Housing, or I have an ADA complaint, they currently would be either transferred to the Bureau of Housing's ADA coordinator or to myself. So it would be similar in structure. There would be a list of Title VI coordinators for the city, and they would be able to be connected with that bureau, or with me directly. So, you know, I'm just in the beginning stages of developing the complaint procedure, and I have a couple of different frameworks. And I think rather than really talking about the details, if I knew what some of your principles were that I could incorporate, that would be really helpful, because I want to make sure that the complaint procedure is as accessible as possible to people who are concerned about not having access to their government.
So I guess one thing I would recommend, even though, well, I would recommend separating out the complaint procedure from the reasonable accommodation request procedure, because they're two very different things. The complaint procedure is when somebody feels that their benefits or services have been denied based on their protected class status. The reasonable accommodation procedure is when someone's asking for an exception to a rule, or is asking for some additional service. Like a hearing impaired person comes to the counter here and wants service, but the person at the counter can't communicate with them. So it's the Bureau's responsibility to make sure that happens. But the Bureau hasn't really done anything wrong at that point, but if they fail to provide the additional service, then they would have done something wrong. And if I'm just concerned with having them side by side like that, more so with staff, that they view these two things as similar to each other when they're not. One is about getting the person's services in an expedited fashion because you need to make some sort of adjustment to the policies. The other is, you are alleging we denied you something.
Right.
And so, okay, this is the process that's going to go through.
So I thank you for that comment. My question to you is, so for example, with the Title VI area, a reasonable accommodation analogy could be drawn for translation services. So if somebody's making a request for translation service, I would like translation services for information. I'd like the information about the art tax provided to me in Spanish and.
Right, I mean, there should be, part of the Title VI thing should already be in an LEP assessment, and that should be, I'm saying should, it's all aspirational, but ideally, the frontline staff will know what the LEP requirements are. So what information do we have translated already in what languages?
Right.
What translators do we have, and what is their availability? Is it a staff member who I need to go get, or is there a language line I call for stuff that's not already translated? That would be the LEP process. So yeah, you're right that somebody seeking LEP assistance, and for those who don't know, limited English proficiency is what LEP stands for. That would be more similar to a reasonable accommodation request, because you're not saying the person isn't saying I've been denied services. They're saying
Right.
I need additional services
Right.
in order to access the services everybody else gets.
Right, and I think that this diagram, while created for the ADA program, is partially to help people understand how all of the pieces fit together, but not at all to equate the request for reasonable accommodations with a request or a complaint
Sure.
about ADA accessibility.
No, I understand that, but I'm just concerned that, a staff member who isn't conversant with ADA would look at this and be like, would equate the two in their minds. Like, oh, this person's asking for an accommodation, well, that's similar to making a complaint. And then they might
Right.
confuse the timelines, which would be really detrimental.
Right, well, I'll try and make the information more clear that reasonable accommodations need to be made in a very timely way in order to provide people access to it.
Right, because it would then be the failure to do that that would then start them on the complaint process.
Exactly, exactly. And you clearly have an expert on these issues amongst your, which is terrific. So, yes, I will try and make that more clear that they are two different communications with the city.
Right. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
One thing that has come up in my discussions with people about accessibility has just been that while we're providing people access online, for example, this came up recently with regard to our applications for HRC positions. You know, and my response was, well, we've got a phone number that they can call to try to get that, and then we've also got an online resource for them to get that. And the response that I continue to get from those people is, well, what else do you have? And so I would just say that, especially, I know that you're intending to bring this to council for approval. That's a question that I think you're going to get from commissioners, from city commissioners, and to the extent that you can make it very clear what other avenues for either reporting complaints or requesting accommodations are available to
Right.
people who may not have internet access, may have disabilities that prevent them from using the telephone, or just not access. I think that's something to really make sure is very clear, especially with this kind of an agenda item.
Well, and then another, along those lines, and I didn't even think about this when we were doing the applications, but making sure that the website is accessible, and that the materials we post on there are in formats that people with sight impairments can access through computer programs they may have, assuming they have them. But, so, yeah, having it on the website is great, but if it's in a bad format, then it's not really accessible.
Right. So that's definitely something I think you're gonna get, if that isn't made clear, you're gonna get some pushback from council on that.
Right, what I know about the way the ADA program has been, I guess, the complaint process has been made available is that, you know, you can complain by, in writing, you can complain on the phone, you can complain or file a complaint electronically. And there hasn't really been that next step or any other method in which but, you know, if you feel that there's an area that we're not, I think that the shift that I've tried to make with the ADA coordinators is that it really is a service about customer service, and that the person doesn't really need to identify, I have this complaint, which is a Title II complaint for this, that, you know, they have this complaint with the city, and it's really, the onus is on us, for us to determine if it's a Title II complaint, if it's a Title VI complaint, and really how to resolve that. And the goal is to resolve those complaints at the lowest level, and that they shouldn't elevate to a complaint procedure. They should be resolved at the bureau level. They should be resolved with customer service in mind. And I think that that's what you're saying about making sure that the communications with the public needs to describe that, you know, we're there to serve them, and that, you know, we'd be taking that information whichever way they're able to get to us.
And I think that would be really consistent with the way that the ADA and other discrimination type laws work, like FEMLA, where as soon as somebody brings anything really to your doorstep that you believe or your expert coordinator believes could possibly qualify, then that coordinator is the one who should be doing the follow-up.
Right.
And figuring out where exactly, what box that needs to go in and who that needs to go to. I mean, it seems like a pretty huge effort to do that, but more power to you.
So are there any other principles that you'd like to see, either to make the complaint procedure as easy as possible? I believe it was you mentioned last time I was here that to make sure that the complaints are available in the language in which the complaint process is available, followed through in the language of the person making the complaint. and accessibility of all the documents and making sure that it's, we're able to receive complaints in whichever form people are able to make them.
And not to miss an opportunity to gather data, making that a stronger data collection point as well too, so that down the road we can track what the demographics of perhaps where those complaints are coming from.
Absolutely, I think that's, reminding me.
I don't know if it's appropriate to take, but just we need to make sure that all of us educated every city office and member who's producing, because people produce flyers left and right. Every flyer has EAO statements in it. That would be great if we can make sure that it's happening. Because we can produce flyers and we need to make sure ourselves have a statement of EAO in the bottom, which I like that you have actually.
Yeah, I think it'd be a shame if I didn't have it at least 2 places. I have it 2 places here, right here. Go ahead. So, absolutely, that will be part of our Title VI training. I do want to make sure that if there are any questions about our process of the plan, we are planning on going to council in June. I'll likely have our final documents drafted about 3 weeks before our council session, which is currently scheduled for June 12th. That's the second Wednesday. So if there's an opportunity for me to have a conversation with this body about an endorsement or a letter of support at council, I really appreciate that. If that's something that you're willing to take up tonight. I was at PIAC, and Danita, if you want to chime in, I was able to get the endorsement of the PIAC committee last night. We're very supportive of this work. It'd be terrific to share the support of the HRC as well.
Can I ask a question that flies sort of 10,000 foot level? With all due respect, to our civil rights attorneys. So I guess what I'm hearing about the plan is, as you mentioned, endorsement. I guess I don't fully understand exactly what you're talking about. So I understand the requirements of Title VI and ADA, but for your position in your plan, to me it sounds like there are many, many elements to it, from complaint process, enforcement, to training, to education. So am I understanding that right? That this is a very multifaceted piece of activity that you are specifically involved in as an individual.
Right.
And then there are coordinators in each of the bureaus, and so that's kind of how this whole program itself lays out.
Right, for not doing a very good job of explaining it myself, you did a very good job of explaining it for me. It is a multi-faceted program that will include, there's the complaint procedures, which are, let's just put the complaint procedures over here, because that's when people are unsatisfied with their service with the city. But then there are ways that we should really be demonstrating our commitment to the principles of civil rights. Those include early inclusion of the community in decision-making. That includes providing a limited English proficiency policy at the city, disseminating information early enough so that people can engage with their government, that training that you talked about, and the overall administration of the program. Those are all components of the program. So we are really working on an effort to promote civil rights at the city. It is a compliance document. Without this document, the city is not in compliance with the Civil Rights Act. But that isn't to say that the city hasn't been demonstrating success in some of the areas and isn't working on promoting those efforts of civil rights. Absolutely, the Office of Equity and their work with the citywide equity committees and their work to eliminate institutional racism is part of that. It's part of that advancing equity and advancing civil rights. The work that the HIAC group has done with all of their development around policies about public involvement, absolutely, those are ways that some bureaus have embraced wholeheartedly, and some bureaus need to work harder to get there. So all of that together, documented, is our civil rights plan. And then, if you are, if after all of our work, you're not satisfied, there's also a complaint procedure which will have data collection.
So the plan, the bigger document has details around all those pieces that's kind of rolled up here. So there's detail about IAC and the work it's done and all the different facets, and even down to the bureau level.
There are bureau responsibilities outlined, bureau director responsibilities, liaison responsibilities outlined, my role outlined. There are varied levels of detail. Some of those policies we're still developing, but definitely the policies around public involvement, the draft limited English proficiency and translation policy will be part of that. So it is not a static document, but a growing document. So as we work farther on this equity agenda, as we work together to advance equity and civil rights at the city, the plan will evolve. Every year there'll be reporting, and so that will be a way for us to look back on, we set these goals, this is where we succeeded, this is where we fell down, this is what we need to do next year.
And is your program, which office, which bureau does it in?
I live in the, seems like that.
City speak.
It feels like that sometimes, at the Office of Management and Finance. And the Office of Management and Finance is typically a bureau that resides under the mayor. And I think that the reason why the position was in the Office of Management and Finance is because that is a bureau that, similarly to most often the police they're both under the mayor.
I think I would just chime in and add that in my conversations with Shoshana is that it would be most desirable for the communities that I work with that up front the city just acknowledges and puts out these like goal associated with it. It's unacceptable that we have civil rights violations going on or something of that nature, a really strong aspiration that we're reaching for, and therefore we're going to be committed to tracking and being aligned with Title VI requirements. And so there also will be a framework that travels with this information so that we can make it meaningful to our communities too, which is a part of that accountability process, I think, when we're informed and we know that these are part of our city's commitment and that we're legally obligated to enforce them, then we can also be more engaged and active in that process. So for me, that was an important piece too.
Absolutely, and I appreciate your sharing that with the group.
So Shoshana, you've asked if we're ready to vote on an endorsement this time. And I'm not sure if we are or not, but I guess I'd like to know exactly what you're asking for from us so that we can determine whether or not we can do that today or whether we can do that in May. I mean,
Sure.
if we do have next month's meeting as well.
Sure, absolutely. There's plenty of time. I guess the ask would be, in addition to the documents online and the conversation that we have here, I'd like you to consider endorsing the policy and plans that are going to go forward in June. If there is anything that strikes you in this information that you don't think is accurately reflecting your committee's view or commission's view on where we should be headed, I'd love to have that feedback. If there's an opportunity to engage, I know, Kyle, you wanted to engage the Human Rights Commission at several points related to, I think if you mentioned specifically issues where there were systematic issues of discrimination at the city. If you'd like to outline for me how you'd like to be engaged with the program, I'm open to hearing any of that and having you consider endorsing at the May meeting.
Okay. When you say endorsing the policy and plan, I just got out of the deposition, so I'm
Right.
really specific. That's what exactly are you,
Objection.
what exact policy and plan are you referring to?
You know, I think that what would be most helpful for me as a staff member carrying this forward would be a letter of support. It doesn't have to be a full endorsement, it would be more of a letter of support that the Human Rights Commission values the principles that are being presented in the plan, and that it's incumbent upon the city to achieve those goals, and that you support the effort in order to achieve that work.
Well, I think that,
I could make the motion if you'd like.
well, I think that what we could do is draft a letter of support and then circulate it to the commission and then vote on it at the next meeting and then circulate it to council. I think that would probably be the appropriate way to do it at this point, unless,
And if any of you are interested in coming to testify, I'm happy to make sure that could happen. I really appreciate and value the work that you're doing here. It's very difficult work. And, thank you very much for serving.
thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Sorry I was late, everybody. Tried to make it go faster. Okay, so next on the agenda for today,
Could we remind Kyle of the change in the agenda?
so the change that I've been informed about is number 8, the fluoride ordinance discussion has been dropped to 10 minutes, and then we're gonna squeeze JTTF conversation for 10 minutes in underneath it. Is that right? Okay. And so the CDC is up next. So we're gonna talk about the Human Rights Roundtable event?
Yeah.
Who's taking the lead?
Ayala's taking the lead.
All right, Ayala.
I will say you guys have 2 documents, a long list of local organizations and something else that heads up with readings.
Yeah, so, for the roundtable contact list, the stapled paper, we're hoping that you guys will look through it and find organizations that you know you guys can contact or you guys have a personal connection with to be able to contact. Write your name on a blank column. And what you'll say to them is actually in this next document. Should we give them minutes to talk about it or to read it?
Yeah, well, actually, this is the language, and the other piece of paper, this is the language that is the draft for the invitation. The 2 sections on the top are part of the invitation, and the invitation, when you, on Eventbrite, is organized. When you RSVP, you're asked 3 questions. Participants are asked 3 questions, so we can get some information ahead of time about who's coming. So as you, and if you find organizations that you can contact personally, what we'd like to do is time a personal invitation from you to be backed up with this more official RSVP-able invitation that'll come through Eventbrite. And so, yeah, that, I agree, Dayala, maybe we should just give folks a chance to have a look and to see if there's any red flags or any suggestions for the language or additions to that organization that we think that there's somebody that should be on that list that isn't.
Japanese American Citizens Liaison twice.
Thank you.
That's how important they are.
Yeah, exactly. I would keep the one on the second to last page, mark off the first one on the second page. And so if there are organizations that we want to do personal invitations to, should we just email you and Yale?
You know, why don't you write your name alongside in that empty column and hand them to me?
So this column with the name is not already assigned.
Except for Damon's. Damon was the only one who was able to respond to our request about this. So if you see any name but Damon's, we are looking for personal contacts.
So you want to write on this and if you have to.
That sounds like a good idea to me.
So we just have to remember who
So Amy, after we do that, you'll send us an updated list so we remember who we're supposed to
Yeah,
contact.
yeah, and I'll kind of coordinate with you each, so you can let me know when your invitations have been sent.
Is this the total text that's in the invite?
There's almost a duplicate, but a more abridged version of the top that goes within the email as they receive it. This is the internal, once you click in from your email, but there's no additional language.
I just suggest that, and I understand that, Word is an issue, but maybe putting the website to learn more about HRC or maybe our mission.
Okay, so, our
Just
mission is a good idea,
For
and
people who aren't familiar when they receive it.
yeah, the Human Rights Commission up top and then at the signature is underlined as a link. Do you think it should be more highlighted than that this is where they can go for more information?
Do you have more space available for
Yeah.
text? I mean, I always think it's good to throw your
Okay.
mission in there at the very least. And then I might say Portland Human Rights Commission, just so that, it's down there, but it's just not up top.
Okay.
I think that would, yeah, I agree. I think that first paragraph could be a brief summation of our mission. It gives a better natural fit to the next paragraph.
And it adds a little bit of weight, just so people can understand who they're partnering with.
That's great, thank you.
And after that third paragraph, I wouldn't hesitate listing the question, even though they're going to come later. Does that make sense? So they at least get a heads up of what those questions will be.
Okay.
And you don't have to include this or not, but my interest in the third question would be to have a second part to that, which is do you coordinate with these organizations? Just because they're aware of them doesn't mean they do not coordinate, or is it cooperate on that?
Of course, yeah.
So I think it was said, so once we give you names, then you'll send us back an update, what you said, you remember what we said.
Yeah, right.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so the other thing, you might be just, planning to do this at the roundtable itself, but I think it would be nice for folks that are gonna get involved in this, maybe they wanna notice up front, kind of what the outcomes expected are. And, it says, what the goals of the event are, but what are we gonna do with this information? I mean, so essentially what power we have to do something with what they give us. I don't know the answer to that question.
That's really still a work in progress.
Yeah, and so I think it would be nice for folks to know that going in, that, why would I essentially spend some effort to,
Yeah, even if you can't give that specific, maybe an agenda representative would help guide them in that sense. If we can't answer the question now, we can at least admit right up front that we're all gonna move in that direction.
Right.
Finding that way. Maybe there's once you have them click through, they see the three questions, and then maybe they see a rough outline of the agenda for the day.
so have them help set what could be an outcome from a gathering like that.
Okay, yeah.
I missed this part, Amy, but did you talk about the date definite? So I know there have been a conversation about those organizations that were in session.
Yeah, the date is definite because we can't, there was, you want to say that?
Sure.
Yeah.
We talked about the concern that those working on policy will not really be available, because they'll be in Salem until after June 30th. And we were concerned in the end, we were split as a committee about whether or not we should move it to begin with. And then we felt that to bring it into July would be just as challenging in terms of people's schedules because it was so right in the summer. So that's how that decision came. And we also decided that we would be sure to, within our evaluation, ask folks when would be a better or best time to do this the next year round.
Now, session is technically extended into late June, but they rarely actually go that far. Did you consider moving it into early June in order to capture the organizations who may be more readily available about, just a few weeks later? I mean, just the longer you extend it, the better chance there is that those groups that are in Salem are going to be available. And I'm no expert on this issue at all. I'm the one that brought this up because my brother-in-law, who is the communications director at Morgan Center for Public Policy, is the one who recommended that. So I don't, it's all hearsay from my end. So I just didn't know if you'd considered that.
So I'm here, and I don't know much about the schedule either, but I'm seeing Damon kind of nod that even a first week in June would be a big improvement.
I would think so, yeah.
What's the specific reason why we didn't want to do that though?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely can talk about it again, because we're hearing encouragement. We do want to make a decision really soon, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I would say now's the time to consider it, not today, tonight, make a decision, but the sooner the better, because you still would rather have a set date and the invitations going out, even if there are less people that can make it, than have a, kind of a date up in limbo. So I just think that's worth considering briefly, and if you're not gonna do it, pull the
Right.
trigger.
Can I just get a pulse from anybody else on the commission who has an opinion?
Just wondering if we feel like every single person from all of these organizations is gonna be gone, or do we feel like each of the organizations will be able to find one person who can come to a May event for, a couple hours and speak on behalf?
The invitation reads up to 2 people from your organization. Right, so that might allow folks who are not assigned to policy work
Right.
to be more available.
That's what I was thinking, but,
The only thing I heard was that it's just very difficult to get the attention of these groups while session is going on, because everybody's there's such a brief window of time where all of these people's energy is focused in Salem, that they're really just not gonna go to, an event that is kind of something that they've never been a part of before necessarily. That's just what I heard from somebody who does that stuff.
And a lot of may not be directly related to the bill that they're actually concerned about, so.
A lot of it may be so small that is the same person, like, the person in Salem is the person who would be the one attending this.
And also to answer your question, Christina, not all of these groups, and I haven't done a tally, but some of them are working on policy in Salem and some aren't.
Right.
So it's definitely hard call.
it seemed like it was.
Yeah.
I think it's worth considering moving with them, because even some of the ones that are in Salem, some of their stuff's gonna be done by June.
Mhm.
Either with a tank, or they're waiting for that last minute, kind of Christmas tree.
Yeah. So I say we bring this information about the early June improvement as a possibility, and then make a final decision in the next couple of days.
Makes sense to me.
Thank you.
So is there anything else that you want to let us know about with regard to the Human Rights Roundtable event before we move on?
I think that's about it. I do want to clarify that we are going to do this by invitation only, so as those invitations start coming to you, we do want whoever receives an invitation to be associated with who's on our list. And we've narrowed the list to organizations working on systemic changes in human rights issues. So that is excluding organizations who are exclusively doing social services.
Direct service.
Yeah, direct service. Just as you look through this and you think and wonder if somebody isn't on there, that may be why they're not on there.
And are we fighting elected officials?
I would prefer not to. But it's open to conversation. My thinking is,
on this.
I want it to be, I would like it to be something that is a work session for those organizations, and, because sometimes the focus tends to be on those electives, and it diverts. In that vein, I guess the last thing I would say is, as we said, we are still looking into the outcomes, and then within that event, what's the process by which we get to those outcomes? So if anybody has an idea about, and Danita's provided some information about this in terms of how do we support organizations, they're creating a coalition and a united voice. What else could these organizations benefit from all being in the same room? We get feedback about that. We're going to be working on that in the next week or so.
All right. So everybody get your sign-up sheets to Amy by the time you leave today. You can. And good. Thank you very much. Okay. Alan, do you want to start the discussion on budget?
Sure. So John, if you don't have the budget handout, it should be in your phone. So what you have in front of you, we have talked previously about budget. The first, on the left-hand side of this page is the budget that we had talked about, and how we would allocate our budget if we had a full budget of approximately $50,000. Subsequently, we've learned that through cuts throughout the city, our budget for HRC will be approximately $30,000. So we just had to go through, and by we, I mean me, apply cuts in different areas, and that made sense. I mean, there just were some areas that we sort of couldn't cut, just like with any budget. There are just some numbers that don't move enough to make a difference. So what you see are the areas that are kind of highlighted to reduce, to make the reductions that we would need to make. And as we've always pointed out, these are, the funds overall are movable, they're fungible, they're not solid, but this should represent for us as we do our work and move forward throughout the year, excuse me, what we see as priorities as a group on where we will spend money on the types of activities that we want to be involved in throughout the year. So that's what we'd like to see. And again, remember, this is our proposed budget for the coming year that begins July 1st, 2013. So it's the year moving forward. So things like the roundtable that we just talked about are part of the current year's budget, which is 12 to 13, and any subsequent activities we might engage in the spring are part of this current year's. So this is the coming year that we're talking about right now.
Alan, do you have a sense, especially on the areas where things have changed?
Yeah.
How those budgeted amounts match up to actual expenses
From this year?
From this year or from years previous?
Well, let's see. Obviously, for instance, with CDC,
We're not going to.
we don't have a past history, except for what we know they indicated they might spend if we had held those 3 forums this year. So that would be the only one. The other ones do tend to match what we have done in the past.
I think we don't have a baseline for public policy.
That's right. Some of the other task forces we don't have baselines for. We do for food. For CPRC, we know that CPRC, the CPRC subcommittee project is likely to be underfunded for the activities that they've been involved in and are planning to be involved in over the next year. And that's a big chunk of that budget, so it's a real difficulty. The piece that Dante talked about before, the add back that is specifically in the OEHR budget is actually earmarked. You saw that in my email, earmarked for that CPRC project, and it sounds like they are unlikely to get that funding. So that one, I would say, and the ability to potentially do other big education-related events, we might be more limited to be able to do than we have in the past. So that's what I would say. So I think we do need to figure out, is that project where we want to put some priorities, as well as the work that CDC is going to do. Those are the 2 biggest items out of it. I mean, those comprise nearly, a third of what's here.
Well, as far as priorities go, I really think that based on the feedback that we've gotten over the last couple of years from the community, that community discovery issues are something that we should be prioritizing. I think that we've gotten a lot of feedback. I think that during the hearings at council on the settlement agreement, the DOJ settlement agreement, we heard from a lot of people indirectly about the CPRC, or not CPRC, about HRC, and a perception that we aren't as active in the community as we should be, and we aren't bringing people into our group as much as we should. And so I really think that for me, that community discovery piece is an important priority. And so I like that there's a significant chunk there. As far as, I can only speak for my own, for the task force that I'm a part of, but we do a lot of our work, it's pretty much all volunteer stuff. And so I don't think we need a ton of money at this point. There may be an ask down the road, but we've been lucky enough to partner with county, city entities that have volunteered a lot of their time and resources. So I think if we're creative, we can do those type of task force functions without spending a lot of money. And while we may have to cut back on some of the educational activities that we would like to do, like maybe the bus project or things like that, I think it's more important, in my opinion, to be doing community outreach, bringing the community to us, or us getting out into the community and hearing what they have to say, so that we can really act as a conduit between the community and council and give advice to council on how our constituents are feeling about the service that they're being provided and the rights, whether their rights are being honored by the city. So I like what you've done there. And I also think CPRC has been something that has been a really successful committee for us, and I think they deserve to be getting a significant allocation of our resources.
And I think the other part of CPRC outside of the subcommittee project, which has the long name, I think that CPRC has the same focus actually, from our strategic planning process, has that very same focus around connecting with the community. And that's where I would see, funds that go to CPRC outside of the subcommittee project being used for. I think that's what we would see in the coming year.
Just a quick question, how long have we spent? 500 on MLK Day breakfast?
Now, those are just kind of round numbers, but because I think we only spent $200.
I didn't know we didn't spend anything on it. We did? This past year?
Yeah, Kyle and I went.
Oh, okay.
We bought a couple tickets, yeah.
Okay.
Did you not get invited?
I didn't go.
I
You
went.
guys
You didn't
went.
go?
I went.
You two went.
Oh, it was a lovely day.
So much fun.
Yeah, Danita and I, we just like that, just like me.
It's because you guys are the same height.
Right.
So is that possible that's 200, that's 300 rounded? I'm saying, is that possible that's happened?
Oh, without question.
Since
You look at
correct?
these, you look at these numbers and yeah, exactly. And that's to say, we can move those around.
Okay.
But again, when we're talking about, moving from 50,000 to 30,000, $300 isn't gonna move the ball. So that's what those numbers represent, that level of priority setting.
Well, and I'm sorry, Amy.
No, go ahead.
Please, go ahead.
I was going to kind of change the subject, so you might start.
Well, I was just gonna say, one comparator that we're not gonna have is the strategic planning process. And so that took up a huge chunk of that 50,000 last year. And so not having that.
That was also, some of that was left over from the year before.
That's true, there was some residual. But either way, we're not gonna feel as much of a hit as you might otherwise feel if you get 20,000 taken out of your budget.
I agree with your statement. I think a lot of things we can do, with volunteer time and efficiencies, that if we don't do something like strategic planning or giant educational activities, then, I think we can do what we need to do.
Well, so my only question on that is, what haven't we done that is what have we done that is not volunteer? When we spend our time on it, it's all volunteer.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like hiring trainers and the facilitator for the strategic planning, that sort of stuff?
That's one thing. Also, I mean, for the Human Trafficking Task Force, we had an event where we spent
Right.
money. We haven't been doing that as much because we're more focused on the kind of the work itself and not the bringing the people in to give us more information about it. So that's what I was referring to.
So 13, 14 may be light on the big event.
Yeah.
CDC events, those are big events.
Well,
For us.
for us.
Alan, I have a question. Sorry, my Should Jeff's salary be reflected, like a percentage reflected on our budget?
Only if we have the power to fire
So
him.
it's how he's spending time working on
Yeah.
things, just in terms of a representation of what
Yeah.
it takes to run the HRC in the form of a budget, financial picture?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Christine. This is sort of a subsection of the office budget. So the office budget includes, a whole bunch of other elements that it takes to run our commission, including administrative costs that they incur overall, us using these facilities, parking, and Jeff's salary. And so those aren't at all reflected here. This is just the sort of discretionary piece that we use for other items.
And we just don't even have a say over that larger picture anyway? I mean, would it be responsible on our part to understand what that looks like?
Like if you want to put me in for a raise?
Oh, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
We do.
But just like so that we understand as a commission, what does the big picture look,
We
big
could.
financial picture look like to do what we do?
We can actually bring that piece plugs in at the Bureau Advisory Committee level. So that's where we see the entire, kind of the information that Dante just gave us about the budget. And so I'm actually on that and have been involved in that, and so I see that whole thing. We could certainly bring it here if you wanted to see where that all fits in, yeah. I think there is a single document that it lays out, in fact, it lays out all the programs in the office, which I think might be a nice piece for us to kind of see how it all fits together. Especially when we have a big
Just
gathering.
FYI, I mean, HRC gets more money than any other commission or committee in my office.
Yeah.
Thanks,
More than-
Dante.
More than PCOD, more than DEEP, more than anybody.
I just think just from a kind of, I guess that you can't really call it oversight, but as a responsibility of understanding, the financial picture. And then as the finances get reported back month over month, understanding what that's looked like. Is overspending going on? Is underspending going on in the running of the commission? Just take that,
Did we get a document distributed, Dante, at Bureau Advisory Committee that showed the whole office budget? I think we did.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can try to dig that out and bring it forward and show you again where this slice fits into that whole office budget. So I'll try to find it.
Amy, you had something to say?
Yeah, I'm actually extremely thankful that you are doing this for us. And I think it would be helpful for me to understand a bit of the process by which you, not come to the numbers, but by which you engage other commissioners in those decisions. And just also wanted to kind of throw it out to the room to see if this is the best way that we're doing it. I know we don't have a whole lot of time to discuss it, but just as kind of a starter in terms of our process. For example, how much time is given to discussion about where the different categories and priorities go? And I may have been not aware of what was going on behind the scenes with that too.
I can address that. We actually, during our meeting where was the out meeting that we had?
The fire station.
No, it was the last out meeting that we had. It was the
Northeast.
Holocaust Memorial?
I'm sorry, it was at the OAMI. We actually voted on the budget at OAMI as a commission, and that was after Alan solicited requests from each committee. And that's how he got those numbers, is every committee submitted their own budget request. We discussed it at OAMI and voted on that at that time. So it was a very transparent process. Those numbers.
Are a result of that vote?
Exactly.
Okay.
just help me here, also Carol, because I remember that day when we were doing this, but when we did that part, we did it for the part that is 48,000, not 30,000.
Right, well, what Alan has done is taken those numbers and and used what we voted on at OAMI as evidence of what our priorities were at that time, and then tried to reduce based on those priorities. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
I'm coming to your defense.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Yeah, exactly, because again, you know, with a cut like that, you've got to take off 40% of big numbers to get us there. We're not gonna do it by taking out $500 for MLK breakfast. And so that was the only way for us to do it, is to hit those big numbers at those big percentages. That was the only way we could get there.
So how are we?
So, but this is an opportunity to say, no, you know, let's move $2,000.
So how was our involvement in the decision of cut of 40% or 30% or 20% or no cut at all? Who was involved in the cut of 39.6%?
It's a result of the budget cuts for the city overall that connects, the city overall has cut their budget a certain amount. So that went to each of the bureaus. So each bureau had to cut a certain percentage of their budget. And once that filters down to this little slice of the budget, that's the resulting number that you see. So if not every bureau and every entity in the city had a 40% cut, but when it comes down to where we are, that's what we get.
Here's my question. My question is a human rights and equity question. If you are going to touch my budget, basically involve me in the budget. So I'm saying straight, not going around being diplomatic. So who here was making the decision of cut involved in the 40% cut? So are we involved or just taking it and see that's what it is? I'm not asking you, I'm looking at you, I'm asking all of us here.
So my understanding was that Alan was our representation at the Budget Advisory Committee level. And so through Alan's communication with us as a Human Rights Commission, he saw our feedback on the budget. But he was faced with restrictions because of the $27 million deficit in the city budget, that each bureau was mandated to take a 10% cut. And so it's up to the Budget Advisory Committee to maneuver the remaining budget around to see how that works best for them to be functioning. And so our program had to take this amount of cut.
I'm still not clear for me. I'm sorry. What you're clarifying is how we came to the reducing of this percentage is discount. What I'm asking, how the decision came to cut 39.6% or whatever it is?
We didn't make that decision.
So who made the decision?
Dante, do you want to address that?
To get from 50 to 30?
Yeah.
The decision was made, no, HRC was not included in that conversation.
Okay.
It was a conversation that looked at the entire budget of my office and trying to figure out how I could absorb a 10% cut across the board and spread that as equitably across the board among the various commissions and committees and program work in my office as possible. I didn't go to each individual group and say, can I cut some of your money and how much can I cut? I did not do that.
So I have a question around, at the OEHR back process, did you have an opportunity to contribute to the narrative that's submitted to the city's budget work group? Like for Friday when we go, I'm gonna be down there for support on the ONI budget,
Right.
and so some of that, if there was a letter that accompanied our budget, or the OEHR that is informative, it would be helpful.
I did, in the sense that I was part of the conversation and really, the conversation around our work supporting the overall mission of the office, but not a separate piece, again, because we're kind of a relatively small piece of
Right,
a
no, I
bigger
meant
budget.
from the back.
Oh, from the back, oh,
Not
yeah, yes, from the back overall, yes. Yes on the support for the office's budget, and yes on the request for the add back, because that's a significant piece for us. It is, like Dante said, a very uphill fight, especially because the budget office is not recommending any add backs. It would be very nice if we got back in, but at this point, it sounds very unlikely. So advocacy-wise, yeah. Could we try to advocate for the project to council? We could. Because it involves the police. I mean, that's the one opportunity for advocacy we might have, is to say, please add that money back. I'm just not sure how that's going to come across.
So we're doing overtime on this agenda item, but I think that, I think it was Amy's question about how this new number was arrived at, and whether or not there's a process for revisiting that issue potentially. This is the process for that. This is the beginning of that conversation. We've got, this budget starts July 1st, 2013, so we have 2 more meetings before this budget takes effect. And so if there are concerns or requests for a change to this budget, I think that this is the beginning of that conversation. And so we can include an additional budget discussion in the agenda for next month or even the month after, if that's what it takes. But I think that at this point, this is.
I'm sorry, I just
Go
want to
ahead.
clarify. When you're saying this number, are you talking about the 30,000, or are you talking about the smaller numbers that add up to 30,000?
I'm talking about the smaller numbers that add up. If people have requests for how to move these things around, if they just don't think that this was
Instead
the
of
right type of cut,
instead of-
then this is the opportunity to say that. As far as the 30,000 goes, I think that's our number that we should be working with, that we should be expecting for 2013 at this point. And of course, maybe that's not set in stone, but I think it's pretty close to set in stone. So if we want to discuss how to work around that or try to advocate for more, that's something that we can certainly do. But at this point, I think Alan's provided us with what his best adjustment has been after learning that our budget has been reduced, just like every other commission's budget has.
I mean, my recommendation on that, the 30,000 would be, if there's not a clear line to getting more money, to increase that we devote our efforts into figuring out for next year, how do we increase that?
For
How
the
do we
14-15
demonstrate
budget?
Yeah, how do we demonstrate we need more than $30,000 and the city needs to fund that?
Yeah, we can leverage our June conference with a better understanding of what the community needs, to give us a narrative to support
Right,
increase
right,
budget.
absolutely.
And I think that the place to really do that is in our annual report to council in December, to let them know what we've done, and that we, could do more if we had more money, and I think that's the best way to
And
get
you
more
can
money.
be clear about
Yeah.
what more might be.
Yeah, I think that's true. All right. So take this with you. If there are modifications that need to be made, then, be in touch and we can talk about that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the fluoride discussion has remained on the agenda, but it has been reduced a little bit. So this is something that we've kind of batted around a little bit, I think it's fair to say that we've even batted around whether we should bat this around, because it is a complex issue with a lot of different sides and a lot of disagreement, even among those who would typically agree from an equity perspective. So this is a thorny issue, but we thought that even if it's not going to be possible, and I would submit that I don't think it is, especially in the time that we have allotted for it, to come to an endorsement position or a sponsorship position on this issue today, we felt like at the executive committee level that it would probably well, it would be a bad idea to just ignore the issue altogether, and to not at least address the importance of the issue and potentially discuss whether or not this is something that needs to be a more prominent HRC agenda item.
With the caveat that it may not lead to an endorsement of either side.
Right. So, Ashley, go ahead.
So, I just wanted to share with everyone, as chair of the Public Policy Committee, that I had spoken with a number of policy folks in community the last couple months about the fluoridation issue, and there are a lot of strong opinions on both sides and good arguments on both sides. And my perspective is solely based on where we are currently and wanting to build partnerships strategically and looking at, you know, what an endorsement would do or not do for us, sort of the pros and cons assessment. And just because of where we are, you know, with our public policy work being newer, my desire is to pick issues that are either, that we decide internally will bring a great deal of positive change when we take a strong position. And I just want to make sure that if that is what we're doing, we're thinking about the pros and cons here. And this issue, in my conversations, has proven to be fairly divisive. And I just want to make sure if we're going to pick to be on one side of an issue that divides the community, that we be really clear that we're aware of the cost that will be to us as we're building our relationships in public policy work. And so that's not saying that I would be opposed to taking a strong stance on something that's important and there are people who disagree with us. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, is this something that we want to do that? Is this the topic that we want to pick to do that? Right now, considering where we are in our sort of like fledgling stages of public policy work as we develop our legislative agenda and more of that, more and more. So that's sort of the background of my thinking about this. And I spoke with the public policy director at an organization that will remain unnamed at this time because I didn't ask them if I could share it publicly, but they were like, oh God, the fluoridation issue, that's so divisive, which was reflective of my understanding. And they're like, you know, honestly, since you're building this work, you want to have a couple, you know, good, healthy, easy wins with community and build those partnerships before you take on something that really divides community, unless it's an absolutely essential issue to take a stand on. So just wanting to consider the costs and benefits of taking a stand, and if this is an issue that we think is really essential, and just being aware of what the cost will be to us.
Gosh, is there an additional component of this, which is what our voice contribute to the conversation? If it is already so pretty robust and controversial, I'm not sure, not only would we not gain anything, but I'm not sure people are hanging on our word.
Absolutely.
To help them make up their mind.
Yeah, it's that pros cons assessment, sort of like, you know, if we are to take a stand, will that actually contribute anything to the larger conversation at this point? You know, and will that pro outweigh the potential cost to us relationship-wise? So I'm just assessing the landscape, the political landscape, and where we are, and wanting to be strategic in building partnerships and have a big impact when it matters. And I'm not sure that this is that issue, but it's not my decision to make. I'm just here to help move those things forward, and just wanted to share that this, for me, hasn't been an invisible issue. I've had conversations with Kyle and other commissioners as well. But that's sort of the reason why I wasn't as enthusiastic as I normally would be about having this be a big agenda item.
Can you just do a quick context setting about timelines? Just so we're all on the same page. I'm assuming, so are we understanding this right, that fluoridation is an issue that will be on a May ballot? And so is the ballot, do we know when the ballot is mailed and when it's due?
It'll be mailed in a couple of weeks.
Oh, and it's due May 5th then? Okay.
No.
So that's my elections 101.
Let's hear from our experts in the gallery.
The ballots will be mailed May 3rd. Election day is May 21st.
Thank you.
Okay. I've voted before, so I should know that. But, okay, so now we know. So we do have the potential to have this conversation in May. That's
We
what
do
I wasn't
have
sure.
the potential to make this a vote in May, if that's what we choose to do.
So,
Then, yeah.
One thing I was thinking about, and I didn't have the time to do this, but we have a policy analysis tool that we could overlay on fluoridation issue to see what kind of human rights impacts it has. That's one area that we could provide some, to what end is what I asked myself, that like, to what end are we gonna, does the Human Rights Commission gain by weighing in on this? And so,
The actual paper that analysis tool.
not with,
We can forward it.
with the human rights aspect.
Well, would it be at all meaningful to even frame the issue, to help frame the issue for people? I mean, you talk about an analysis tool and, almost like providing that tool to the public so that they're able to frame the issue in a meaningful way, even if the Human Rights Commission doesn't say, and so, here's the issue, here are the potential, pros and cons from a human rights perspective, and so we X. Even if we cut off the and so we X, could it be meaningful for us to say, here's what we think the human rights implications are of this issue. You decide, but this is what we think is being implicated here. Could that be meaningful?
Well, and that's what I was throwing out there too, because when I was thinking, like, I feel like as a commission, it wouldn't, we really, there's no authority by weighing in or benefit for us to spend time and energy informing we need to be informed, and I support all of that, but as an agenda item for this commission. But then I thought, but we have that tool, and is that of use? I feel like it could be. What do you think?
Pass it around, we just want to glance at it.
I think we should be applying, I don't know this tool, so that's good to know. I think we should be applying it to all consideration, all topical considerations,
Yeah,
to
that's
assess
what
whether
I'm
it's something that we
That's
take
what
up or
it's
not
about.
consistently. So, yeah, if we could use that, that would be great.
One struggle that I have when I'm sitting listening to all this is because all great, but my going and frustrating this a little bit is, should they put something out there in our website or tell our council members, please don't send people to us, or here is if you want to come to us? Or should we make it easy for people to come and talk to us on any topic or issues that they find without trying to screen it themselves, feel frustrated, and maybe screen themselves out? What should we do? I come to one decision is I do not want anybody to feel excluded. I want everybody to feel included. But us, we have the strength and the power, and we've got to say this is us or not us as a response. So people are not hanging. We are not being politician about it or using politics, but at the same time listening to our community, what's going on. So I applaud you. And thank you for having strength to come out and say what you feel and think about that to help us think as well. So this is one of them. Is this fall in under? I'd love to hear from our public and from our community about this. And they really appreciate it. They came to us seeking our support about it. They really appreciate that. But I think we owe it to everybody to let people know, here is what we think. Here is what we suggest for you to where to go or to get that support if needed. But here is where we stand as well, our answer. Well, yes, no, what we're going to do next for you, or we can't because this is not our area. So that's where I stand a bit, Phil, because I feel like we should have some screening tools and this and this and this. No, we should not, because we'll be excluding people. Some people will cut themselves out. Or should we ask to control it and see what we have to say? Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I agree that we shouldn't make a decision on it today. I think that we need to be educated, and I also agree that we should probably put in that tool, but I think that we should come up with something because it's a systemic issue. It involves the whole population of Portland, so it falls under what we do. And I did Google Scholar, I just Googled Scholar fluoride, and some of the first things that came up were, well, I guess we shouldn't, I don't know if I should present stuff that I found on it. Probably not. No. Okay.
Not with this.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so, yeah, but it is a systemic issue, so I think that we should at least pay attention to it and come up with some kind of answer from the HRC about what we think.
One thing that I don't want to participate in is taking a stand on something that divides the minority populations of Portland. I'm very uncomfortable with that. So I'm gonna be clear about that when we take a vote, once we explore the issue further. If it looks like that will be a presenting issue, it's my personal, it doesn't feel right in our capacity if that's what we'd be contributing to. And one of the criticisms that's been made public about this issue in Portland is that often those who are endorsing it are not those who are the populations who would supposedly be benefited by fluoridation. There are some exceptions, of course, and some good exceptions, but it's just something to be mindful of. I don't know if it would be good for us to sort of take to check in with some of the organizations. I'm aware of some that are endorsing and some that are not, but I just don't know how we want to do this assessment of the community and whether we're truly representative of what would benefit Portland in this regard.
Question about what you just said. When you said minority populations, do you mean communities of color? Because just from anecdotal, listening to different groups, it already seems like it's already divided these communities. So I'm not sure how we would contribute any more to that, actually.
Well, I don't want to further divide or pit one against the other or participate in that when we're here to bring voices forward. And I want to be mindful about how divided it is, I guess. I'm just very aware of that.
One thing that I've noticed though is that the divisions aren't necessarily among the communities of color. It's not people saying, oh, I wish we had fluoride to help our tooth decay problem. What I see is people trying to help, and instead of listening to the community, actually wondering what the community feels and what the community wants. Do they want fluoride in their water, or do they want education around dental health? It's not. We need to listen to the communities more.
So I think we could probably talk about this all night. And it seems like an issue that is important enough to people around this table that it's something that we should at least explore further on the policy level and potentially put on the agenda for next month to either provide some sort of, as we were discussing earlier, provide some sort of framework for the way that we believe this issue is impacting our community or is implicating human rights issues, or to take that next step into what we think about that. And there very well might be if we have 13 commissioners voting on it, it might be 7-6 if we decide that that's how it's going to go. And I know that this commission has taken votes, and I think more than once on issues where there was not a unanimous or even serious majority. So I think that at this point we're gonna move on. And Ashley, if you'd be willing to, just as the policy chair, and I'll join you, and anybody else who would like to join the policy committee and looking into this further. Danita, if we could get your help using the analysis tool, that would be great. And and maybe reaching out and talking to a few other people outside the commission about the issue.
Okay. Yeah, I need help.
So we're going to move on for now. Ashley and I are going to continue to look at this, and anybody who wants to get involved with that, please let me or Ashley know. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about Joint Terrorism Task Force now. We're running a little bit behind, but we did put this on the agenda, and we need to. This is something that is sort of in the emerging issues category. Everybody knows, I think, that City Council voted to accept the report of the police chief on the work that the police bureau has been doing with the FBI, and it was 3-2 vote. So this is not an uncontroversial issue even at council, and I think that one of the votes was the mayor to accept the report. And I think we all know, or some people might know that the mayor has in the past shown some hesitance to support that. So this is an issue that.
Which
Mayor Hales, when he was a commissioner. So, how did this get on the agenda?
I asked.
Right. Amy, so Amy, will you please open it up for us? I just want to know who prompted me to do it. Okay, go ahead.
Well, it came to my attention and I contacted Kyle to ask if it could be on the agenda, and I did go to council session that day. So I have some notes. Kyle asked me to take note of the organizations that were testifying, the individuals that were testifying. So I do have that. I've got a general, it was pretty much a united voice among the testimony. So I've got a general comment about that, and then specifics about what was missing in the report, depending on how far we want to go into that. And then you sent out the documents that reflect the report that HRC put out against joining the task force in 2011. I thought we'd have those here today, but maybe that wasn't requested.
I must not have, I'm sorry.
Oh.
But I can certainly get those out again.
So you asked for us to read them before we come here.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I did that last Friday, but.
So I was hoping,
Actually,
oh, sorry.
Okay.
My interest in this being on the agenda was to explore if there's interest in picking this issue up again, because I do see it as a continuation of that statement, because we're not getting detailed information in the report. And then also, anyway, I think, and then Damon was actually encouraging us to have a conversation about it, to see if we are, as a commission, still are on the same page with that 2011 report. So that's where we are. Depending on what kind of time, I kind of want to defer to.
Damon, are you counting or raising your hand?
No, I was counting. I was just counting, but there's only, there's at least 5 people that weren't there then, so that's why I suggested that.
Yeah, I think it's a great suggestion. In 2011, obviously, as Amy said, the HRC encouraged council not to participate in JTTF, and council chose to participate in JTTF.
Continuing our long streak of council going against anything we say.
Well, in any case, and I think Damon's pointing out that it was the HRC was composed differently at that time, and I, from reading, I think I had just become a member of the commission at that time, and so had actually Christine. From reviewing it again, it was clear that there was a lot of community participation involved prior to the HRC making that recommendation, to the HRC's credit. And so not only has the composition of the Human Rights Commission changed in that time, the composition of the community has changed in that time, and so this may be an opportunity for us to engage the community and find out if anything has changed as far as community sentiment goes, if community sentiment has grown stronger against participation in the JTTF because of information that's come out since 2011. This really could be, first of all, I think that the report was already accepted. So this is, if we want to engage on this issue, it's not something that we have to do by May. We can reconvene those community members who participated before and add to that. And this is something that the HRC decides is a priority, then I think that's a good way to address it, is to go back and do that again.
You say all the testimony was.
I don't recall testimony. Or testimony that was approving of the report.
Okay.
And I would also add, my memory from when we made that recommendation, that it was a unanimous city council decision to rejoin. And it's a 3-2 decision to accept the report. So council itself has also seemed to have shifted some. Whether there's 3 votes potentially to withdraw from the JTTF, I don't know, but at least it's some signal that council itself is reconsidering.
I would say, my impression is that that's true. There was language to express that there is a need to reevaluate the relationship.
Well, and I think at least the concerns expressed by Commissioner Fritz were not necessarily with the relationship itself. I don't know if anybody saw, there was a subsequent email from Commissioner Fritz to Roger Hardesty about, because he had sent her, actually our report, and said, you should have paid attention, essentially you should have paid attention to this to begin with, and a lot of these things have worn out. And she responded to that email saying, well, the police bureau is going to be, or the FBI is going to be working in Portland, whether we're joining them or not, we might as well know what's going on. And so it seemed like, to me, based on that email and her comments, that she was more concerned about the reporting process and whether or not she had access to the information regarding the partnership.
Right. No, I
between
don't want to
FBI and
overstate
PPD,
the 2 votes against it, but I mean, it was a unanimous decision to rejoin, and now there is at least some debate whether things are operating the way that they thought they should.
Was the vote just to accept the report?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
No different kind of vote.
For me, there is a big difference. Actually, we are coming to it right now to understand better. Difference between joining and accepting a report. I can accept any report, but that doesn't mean I'm supporting it or I really join or not joining the group. For me, is the one that's our issue that I think personally, as one of the people that feel the Human Rights Commission, is to keep going on this issue, not just drop it. We believe that strongly. I was one of the people that strongly, not only this time, even before the Human Rights Commission was formed, one of the people to go testify against it, the first time with Tom Plaza. I will continue because the last thing I need is, or I see, and they keep hearing it today, that from our community, people be driving their cars and they are worried whenever they see a U.S. government license plate or a state government license plate behind them, or somebody following them for a long distance. Are they going to be all arrested and sent back home, or are they going to stay here? Some of us, we have leverage, call it white leverage, call it professional leverage, whatever you want to call it, that we don't think a second when we look at back mirror doing that. I do, every time. I don't care if it's Portland Police Bureau, I don't care if it is FBI. I identify every license I can tell you of governments or government vehicles, even the carry Oregon license plate. I was attacked by law enforcement. So for me, it is a crucial point, and we fail to continue and push for what's happening in our communities. These 2 members that changed their mind because what they were promised is not what they saw. That's bottom line. And here comes again our community. I always say maybe I'm ignorant. Here is our community when we're saying loudly about it, you are not listening. Now you're saying what's happening. Well, of course that's what's going to happen. Is FBI going to come and tell you, I want to involve you in every search or listening to phones or things like that? Of course not. Did they have powers to overrule the chief police? They have the power to overrule the chief police. So thanks that this is a reality. So what are we going to do? My question here, if we're bringing GTTF again, what are we going to do? Just keep it slightly again? Or I need to bring it again, asking for reports from the police? Are you paid, when you are paid on our time, are you involved in certain acts or things like that? We want to hear from you, those things, and follow up on these discussions. Invite Amanda Fraser and others to hear from them why, or what you feel our support will be in this area that you feel that's not being listened to you, or things that, what are we taking, what are we doing? That's my thing, because we fail to continue in that path. We started it, we did a great job, I upload everybody here, including Vanessa's leadership when she was the chair at the time. We did great things, but as soon as it passed, we started being quieter and we carried other conversations. And we carried conversation also of the people deported. A lot of them deported because of what? This is one of them.
You know,
So I just wanted to kind of add support to the pieces that I hear Abdul saying that these are, this is a living and breathing issue in our community, and we issued a report. I think that it would be important, or at least for us to consider bringing that back. I would be in support of that. I want to see how those implications are. And it's similar with our work with the sheriff's office and having ICE located within there too. That work we started and we got to a certain point, but do we just give up and walk away from that work when I feel like it's our responsibility to keep that alive and do what we can do to bring another side of it to the community. I would be in support of opening it.
yeah, and I think, I think our entry into it isn't so much that, you know, whether or not the report should or should not have been accepted, but that the report itself, or the lack of details in it, is a symptom of what we pointed out in our original report. That it's sort of, I told you so. Here's what we said, you know, and actually that, if I remember correctly, was Commissioner Fritz's, one of her issues, even though she supported it. And I think next year there probably was a second, it might have been Commissioner Saltzman that said, I'm going to support this, but I want to watch to see what happens when the reports come out. So this is a symptom of the degradation around this issue. So, you know, we're 2 years out now, and all of a sudden we're seeing these things that are, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, these are coming to pass, just like Evan said.
So let's go to Amy, and then we need to close this chapter, but I think that I want to ask a question that may help us do that. So go ahead, Amy.
Clearly, I'm interested in our bringing this back, and I'm willing to anchor a group that would be able to find some action for it. I also want to add emphasis to the promise, the issue about a promise was not granted, because I think it's important to clarify that part of the resolution and the agreement for the joining involved a reporting process, and that's being, you know, not accomplished well. And there's lots of details that we could dive into right now that could take some time for us to develop and research and get to a point in a couple of months or more to be able to list and ask for.
So my question is, was the ad hoc committee that was responsible for creating the JTTF recommendation ever disbanded? Well, if it hasn't been, then we still have an ad hoc committee dedicated to the issue of the JTTF.
Disbanded it.
Well, let's not have that.
Oh, no.
Is anybody that was on the ad hoc committee for the JTTF still on our commission? Abdul, weren't you on the committee?
Abdul and Maria, was that you? I think you and Maria.
We were on the, Abdul and I were on the ICE committee with the sheriff's office. I don't think
we
I
were
was on-
overlapping in two. We were in this one and in the sheriff.
Were we both in the other, in the JTTF one?
I was in GTTF.
Well, either way, it seems like there is a substantial interest in continuing this work that was already started. And my recommendation would be for those interested, because if we still have an ad hoc committee, then we don't need to reestablish one here. What I would recommend is that anybody who is interested in continuing the work surrounding the JTTF issue, especially considering the new composition of city council and potentially the new attitude of some of our commissioners, get together and start talking about this issue again. And it looks like Amy is interested in doing that. And so those who are interested, I think you just said anchoring, so I'm going to do this to you. Those who are interested in participating in that effort, I think need to talk to Amy about it and need to organize that. Damon?
And I think I was on that previous ad hoc committee, so I have notes, and provide to you, for you.
I'd be happy to take minutes. I'm still in it, so.
Still in it.
Remember that if the composition of the committee goes above 6 members, then it becomes necessary to do public notice, public meeting notices.
So we're running a little behind. You know, I know that we added, well, it would be time for our committee and liaison updates now. We've had some problems with getting public comment in timely recently. And I feel bad about that because I'm supposed to be the one making sure that this stuff happens. I'd like to propose that we move public comment up to right now and move our committee and liaison updates down, and we can deal with that if we have to go over time without taking the time of our visitors. Is that okay with everybody if we do that?
Could I just make it quick?
Sure.
Obviously, we welcome the public to these meetings. The security guard downstairs is there just to make sure everything is going well. If the security guard asks anybody questions as they're coming in the building, it's just because he wants to facilitate getting people to the right place. So if you could just please be sure you're courteous to the guard, that would be great. And if you could refrain from putting your cigarettes out on the wall of the building, that would be great too. So just want to make that note.
So,
Thank you.
thanks, Jeff. Okay. All right. So we have, the first person we have signed up for public comment today is Rick North. Mr. North? I'm sorry. 3 minutes.
Do I
Mr.
sit
North,
up
if you
here?
want to join us, actually,
Sit up there.
You can sit either there or up in between Abdul and John. It'd be
You can
nice.
see me if that, okay, sure.
That'd be nice. Thank you.
Has anyone who's making comment, have you signed up on the sheet? If you haven't, please.
Does anybody want to comment who hasn't signed up for comment? No? Okay, great.
When Jeff brought up the security guard, as soon as he said that, I thought, is he warning us about not getting into any fights or anything like that?
Oh, also no fights.
But we promise not to. My name is Rick North. I'm on the executive committee of Clean Water Portland. We are the organization that is leading the opposition to fluoridation. Just real quick, most of my background, about 30 years, has been in nonprofit public health. I'm retired now. And like so many other people, I used to think fluoridation was fine until a friend of mine asked me about 5 years ago to look at the science. Once I looked at the science, I became a very different opinion. I just thought, no, it's really going against it in terms of both safety and effectiveness. With just 3 minutes, I'll make this quick. We believe, first of all, this is a human rights issue. This is a drug. This is a drug. And as acknowledged and regulated by the FDA. And that's a matter of public record, which we can provide to you. And we just don't think that anyone should have to take a drug without their informed consent. And if it's in the water supply, you really don't have that informed consent. You're going to hear that, most likely, that most of the communities of color organizations and low-income people have said they're in favor of this. That's accurate in the Portland area. I wish we'd had a chance to get to talk to them before they made their endorsement. We didn't. I can't say this, on a poll, we don't have any independent polling on this, on a K2 poll. I believe it was 57%, to be off 1 or 2%, of people of color said they were opposed to fluoridation. So there is a lot of controversy here. There's, and we don't have time to present this, there are very strong scientific data that this significantly and disproportionately harms both communities of color and low-income people. And that I'd like to have the chance to present to you. So I appreciate the opportunity. Am I out of 3 minutes here?
Go ahead, you've got another minute.
I got another minute and a half, okay. I'll tell you one quick story.
This does not involve somebody that is a person of color, nor is she low income. Her name is Angel. Angel's on our committee. Angel has low thyroid condition, hypothyroidism, and diagnosed about 10 years ago that affected her, tremendous weight gain, painful joints, very difficult time having any energy at all. She's a mother, 35 years old, with a 2-year-old daughter. And we know there is solid scientific data that fluoride lowers thyroid conditions. The last thing she wants is this, is to have happen. She cannot have this. Her physician has told her that. She knows it. She is just one person out of thousands that have this condition, and that's just one condition it affects. So I just want you to understand, this is a question of safety, very much safety. It's about a lot more than just teeth. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have cards here. Could I leave this with, is it Amy?
Ashley?
Ashley, I'm sorry, Ashley.
Yeah.
I will leave you a card.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Levon? Levon Heister, everybody. Portland Commission on Disability.
And I'm actually representing them this time.
Oh, welcome.
So part of the Portland Commission on Disabilities work that we're really working on this year is to make more connections within the Office of Equity and Human Rights within the equity community and with the Commission on Human Rights, because we think that you guys are our kind of sister organization here. And so I'm going to go ahead and just give you a quick update. You heard from Nyla 2 months ago. Since then, in February, we elected a new chair, which is Joe Van Veer, and a new vice chair, who is Nicholas Johnson. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading my own stuff. We have a new subcommittee which is forming, which is the Public Safety Subcommittee, and that I believe is going to start meeting in April. And our next full meeting will be on the 12th of April, so basically a week and a half from now. And you're all welcome to join us. It's from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock in this room. Some of the activities going on right now within our subcommittees are the public outreach and awareness. Is working with, met with Judith Mowry from the Office of Equity and Human Rights, and we're talking about data collection, because that's one of the huge issues in the disability community, is having good data to base policy off of. And so we started with that. And the other thing, and this one affects you guys, is you are all invited on the 18th at the Red Star. We are having one of our networking evenings. We had one in January. And we basically go have fun. We do talk equity issues, but we meet other people from other communities, and it's just a great opportunity to come out and relax and get to know people on a more personal level. Okay. Some of the other things we're involved with, the accessibility within the built environment, is addressing the proposed budget cuts to the curb cuts, because that's a huge concern of ours. Yeah. And we have a new chair in that subcommittee, which is Alan Delatorre. And Alan Delatorre is actually doing a walking tour with some folks and showing them some of the highlights of accessibility that we do have in Portland, because as much as we have stuff that we can still work on, we actually really do some things well here, and so we want to kind of show people and show off what Portland's doing. And then the executive committee has assigned people as liaisons to city council members, and so that's part of the exciting work that we've been doing recently. And the employment committee continues to move forward with the model employer. I can't remember, they passed it, I can't remember what you call that, but the model employer program that the city has taken on. And so pretty much that's what we're up to. We hope to see you on the 18th or maybe at the full commission meeting.
Thank you, Yvonne. Okay. Clifford Walker. Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. I am charmed by this group of folks here. You have a mighty task before you. I'd like to see that template this lady was talking about, how you lay over, because you're our voice in the human rights area, but it seems like it also you might be our politicians. Like, we don't want to do anything with the business, or we don't know if we want to weigh in or don't weigh in. That's a question of leadership there. Again, my name is Clifford Walker. I'm here today to say a few words about the campaign on fluoride. I'm a Portland native. I was influenced a lot by the clean water people that do not want fluoridation in the water. But their approach to me was, don't let us tell you how to vote. Do the research. We feel you're an intelligent person, and after you read the data, trust your own instincts. And I really appreciate that approach by the clean water people that say, we're not going to tell you how to vote, but we're going to encourage you to get informed. And I did get informed. And I learned that it's bigger than dental, so much bigger than dental. I'm a veteran also. I work with the NAACP Veterans Committee. And a lot of us were in the Vietnam era, where a lot of chemicals, soldiers were exposed to a lot of stuff, Agent Orange, airplane exhaust, and our immune systems became compromised as a result of it. So anybody who has a compromised immune system, African Americans have a 30% greater chance. I'm trying to flip these numbers as I read them, but asthma is huge in the African American community. And it's people with very hypersensitive, what do you call it, sensitivities. And just trace amounts of chemicals can set people off. They won't sleep, they'll scratch. And the skin is also it's the largest organ in our body. And people aren't talking about that. It's a dental issue. They talk, you'll learn that it is a human rights issue. Like, I don't want it because I'm a hypersensitive person. And I avoid chemicals in my environment. And I have been exposed to them and I've suffered as a result of them. But for veterans whose systems have been compromised, think about them. Please. It's not just dental, and the people with dental issues, there are other remedies to address that. So that's my little 2 cents. Just do the research on your own. Don't let anybody tell you how to vote, or they'll tell you how to vote. But be responsible citizens and make up your mind. And I'm convinced that if you look at the information, you realize how enormous the situation is, how it does adversely affect people of color just because of the kinds of diseases that go with different groups of people. And asthma is one of them. Kidney issues are another. High blood pressure is another. So we'll hear it framed in dental, but so many more people are affected outside of the dental ring. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is it Raquel?
Yeah.
Raquel, what's your last name?
Bornanesk.
Bornanesk. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Great. Well, my name is Raquel Bornanesk, and I'm here with the Healthy Kids, Healthy Portland campaign to fluoridate Portland's water. I represent one of the 85 nonprofit organizations. I co-founded a small nonprofit 10 years ago, following the footsteps of my mother, who's from Cusco, Peru, and have been really dedicated to health equity. I've got a master's in public health here in Portland. And I really am so honored to be part of such a large coalition
of so many, not only organizations, but thousands of individuals within those organizations who are all very concerned about the dental health crisis going on here in Portland. Every city larger than Wichita, Kansas has had water fluoridation, so this is not something that is a new topic and a new issue. It is new for Portland. But the dental health crisis is something that I personally cannot ignore. We've had many pediatricians, along with the endorsement of the Oregon Pediatric Society, coming in and volunteering in our office for the last 3.5 months. They tell horrific stories every week. Just the other day, Katie Zuckerman told a story about having a patient who was 4 years old with such a swollen face that they thought something was wrong with his eye. And then they asked him to open his mouth and saw the rampant decay that was causing this infection. Had to admit him to the hospital for intravenous IV antibiotics to save his life. She told the story like it was no big deal, like it happened all the time. This is something that absolutely needs to be addressed. We have the solution, one of the solutions at our fingertips. We know that brushing your teeth with fluoridated toothpaste cuts decay by 25%, and water fluoridation cuts decay on top of that another 25%. So you can still see, even doing those two things, which we don't have one of here in Portland, you still need to do regular preventative care. So we have indeed the support of the Oregon Pediatric Society, the Oregon Medical Association, the Oregon Nurses Association, the Coalition of Community Health Clinics, representing 12 free clinics, health clinics, not dental clinics, but health clinics, supporting us, because this is absolutely a bigger issue than a dental problem. This is an overall health problem. Your dental health is absolutely related to your overall health. And you know, we have 40% more children in Portland have 40% more untreated decay as compared to Seattle children, which has been fluoridated for decades. And you know, there is a huge body of research supporting the benefits of water fluoridation. In fact, there is more research than showing tobacco causes cancer, and then showing the human impact on climate change. So, you know, absolutely, are there climatologists who don't think that we're having an impact on the climate? Yes, there are. Are there medical professionals, you know, back in the day who didn't think that smoking caused cancer? Yes, there are those few people, and you have heard and you will hear from some of those today. There are a handful of dentists and doctors, but the vast majority, and those associations representing hundreds of them, thousands of them, are absolutely supportive and are very concerned about this crisis. Fluoride is a natural mineral that is in the dirt. It's in every water supply. It's in the Bull Run water supply at a very small amount, but it's there. And so if you drink tea or coffee or beer or wine, you're actually consuming almost the amount that you'll be getting from optimally fluoridated water, because the hops that's grown, it's grown in dirt. That's where the fluoride is. And so it's in your beer, it's in your coffee, it's in your wine already. So
I'm just gonna have to ask you to wrap it up.
Oh, sure.
That's a good time.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I would just say that if you go on the internet, don't just Google, don't go to WebMD. This is much more serious than that. You have to go to reputable organizations like the Centers for Disease Control, and go to people you trust, like your doctor and your dentist. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, we don't have anybody else signed up for public comment. Is there anybody else who wanted to sign up for public comment but didn't get a chance? Okay, thank you all for being here today.
Thanks for doing that early, I appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, so we still have the matter of the committee and liaison updates, but we're going to go a little long to get through them if nobody objects to that. I understand. If they do, I don't think we have any votes coming up, so if you have to go, I understand. But Danita, would you like to tell us what's going on with CPRC?
Sure. CPRC met at the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods office last month. That was really nice, getting out into the community. And our next slew of meetings are actually scheduled out in the community, hopefully for the rest of the year. So we'll be out in community space more and doing outreach. Outreach is already done to the Q Center as well. So tomorrow I'll be meeting with AC O'Day to build an agenda and hopefully be able to weave in some of the issues that might be pertinent to the community that we're meeting in. So that was one thing. We're continuing working on our work plan, making some slight modifications, but really checking some of those items off, as well as we're losing a representative, Natasha Huntsberger from the police department is really becoming consumed in her work that she's doing with engaging the Slavic communities. So had to step down, and so we'll also be reviewing. HTTF stuff, yeah. She is, that's our, so we'll be talking with command staff tomorrow about a replacement for the committee that we'll bring forward next month for the HRC approval and consideration.
And that is she was a police bureau member, right?
Right.
And then you've also got Stephen Manning's place is
Position,
going to
that's
be
right.
filled.
So Stephen Manning was also, so with his resignation from the HRC, we're gonna postpone filling that HRC position on the CPRC until our new HRC commissioners come on board, so we can give opportunity for new engagement at that time. Other than that, I think I'm gonna turn it over to Damon. We have a very wonderful announcement of our subcommittee work.
Tuesday, April 16th, annually, the Portland Police have a award ceremony. And the subcommittee is going to be honored at the award ceremony and meet all the members of the subcommittee. So if anyone wants to attend, I could send that information. Although Jeff will be able to coordinate some sort of press release that gives CPRC and the HRC some love.
That's April 18th?
Tuesday, April 16th at 3:30. It's going to be over at David Douglas neighborhood.
Congratulations, you guys. That's great.
Monday, I believe, is receiving an award as well, isn't it?
I don't know. Actually, I have no idea who's giving it.
Okay. Just you guys.
Just
Yeah.
It's
Well,
a lot
great
of
job.
people. It's a lot of people that it's their annual.
All right. Congratulations, everybody. Okay, is that it from CPRC? All right. Malloy, nominating committee, did we get any applications?
We did. We got 10.
10?
Wow.
Yeah.
Woo.
And the pool, I felt,
One of them was here.
and several of the nominating committee members expressed agreement that it was a very diverse pool, or it is a very diverse pool on many different categories, race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, age. So we're very pleased about that. We have met and we've met to review the applications, and we'll be doing interviews later this month. And so hopefully we'll have recommendations to bring to the May meeting. And then from there, it's just whatever the process is these days to get.
Hopefully it won't take as long as it's a job.
Yeah.
We have 5 through it. We have 5 of the 7 scheduled.
Good.
So we just have 2 that need to get back.
And I actually posed that question to Commissioner Fritz last time I saw her. And all she really asked for was that we send out notice of, I should probably be careful about what I say because I can't remember exactly what she said, but it had to do with just letting everybody know who the candidate was, so that if any commissioners wanted to meet with that person, they would have the opportunity in advance, and it wasn't like a couple of days notice. So it didn't seem like anything too burdensome, but.
Did we send the information, like the packet to all the city council, or?
The packet, which packet?
Their application and resume.
No, I don't think, that's not what she asked me. If you need further clarification about what they're asking for, it would be a good idea to ask
There
for
needs to
that.
be clarification over why they feel they didn't get that. timely enough in the past, because.
Well, and that's fine, but I'm just saying if you want to get that clarification, that'd be a good thing to do, probably.
Is there an issue that would, why we couldn't send that to city council?
I don't see any.
No, I mean, just, you know.
I mean, just as a preemptive, you know, here they are.
Well, and then it becomes, you know, we've already done kind of work, so. And
My
like opening
caution
next
is-
door.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I would also want that to be known, would we want that to be known, made known to the applicants in the beginning?
I think it says it on the
It
application.
says it's public. Yeah, yeah.
And they're gonna be potentially screened by, they're going to be screened by the city council either way, at the end.
But they have been worded as public information.
That information,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you know, I mean, just to be clear, I don't care that city council members would like to meet with them, that's fine. What frustrates me is when it delays their ability to join the commission.
Well, and that's all I'm
It's a
saying.
defined process.
Right.
Right.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, is that what we should do is make sure that the process is well-defined, so that we don't run into the same problem of not having John as early as we wanted to.
And you're asking Malloy to?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were.
I was just saying.
Okay.
I'm just saying that.
So
it's
how do
something
we
that
get the
should-
process?
It is still not a well-defined process.
How do we get there?
We ask. And so, I think that it would be worth setting up
So I
an
think that
informational
when we make
meeting
the
about that.
decisions, we will discuss communicating with the council.
Great.
All right. Well, thanks very much. That's exciting. Ashley, did you have an update for us from the Public Policy Committee?
A couple of things. You probably already know that the paid sick leave ordinance passed 5-0 vote in favor. So if you didn't know that, get excited. We were able to participate in one of the most recent hearings and provide testimony. I actually wrote testimony and then rewrote it on site because of the business interests. Some of the statements provided, wanted to make sure that we were being responsive to some of those issues and highlighting some of the successes in other areas where paid sick leave policies had been enacted. So I think we were pretty well received there, kept it short. Really, it wasn't a very divided group. It was very clear, at least to me, that the commissioners were already in favor and that most of the people present and providing testimony were in favor of the ordinance. So one of the exciting things is there's a House bill that was scheduled to be introduced today. And then also there's national legislation that's being put forth as well. So we're part of a national movement and participating in this, so that's an exciting thing as well. We already talked about the fluoridation issue, which I'll be taking up and have some updates prior to the next meeting. And also, Amy and I have been working on the decision-making mapping for Public Policy Committee. So we're going to meet again, and that has implications for the larger Human Rights Commission, but we're going to be meeting again. So updates to come about that, trying to make it easy so that commissioners see how we make decisions, and I think that policy impact assessment tool will be helpful also. I saw it for a second, and then it went back that way.
I think it made it around.
But I'm sure I can get a digital copy.
Yeah, I'll send it.
Okay, great. And I'm also mindful of the fact that we need to convene like a first larger public policy committee meeting with the chairs who volunteered to sit on that soon-ish, so I'll be sending information out about that. And, yep, I don't have anything in particular. Yes?
Can I ask an in-person question?
Oh, yeah, please.
How far in advance do we map out potential policies that we should be aware of?
As far as possible.
As far as possible, so we've been in more of a reactionary state recently because this committee has been established for a couple months. So there's what we've been doing now, and then there's the vision for the future, and I think the vision for the future is to have a legislative agenda with briefings developed and have regular information sharing opportunities with council representatives and other stakeholders who are influential, and the way that we're sort of aligned in sort of our beginning conversations about establishing this committee is that we be responsive to community need. So the Community Discovery Committee sort of findings or discoveries are very much going to influence what policy initiatives we take up. But there are different kinds or areas of policy that we'll be working in, like long-term legislative reform. There might be term response to issues that, you know, require policy work. We've talked about tuition waivers for victims of sex trafficking. So there are a number of different areas we're exploring, but if you're interested in public policy, that's really exciting to me. I don't know if that's what you're saying.
Sounds like it to me.
We could use some more energy and, you know, if you have any suggestions.
Yeah.
We got it on
That's
camera,
also
so
helpful.
it's good.
Make sure that goes in the minutes.
Hatfield School of Government.
Yeah. Whoa.
You're a smart one.
So, you know, one thing that Levon actually mentioned that I had been just thinking about a little bit was that PCOT is assigning a liaison to each commissioner's office. And, you know, I don't know if there's an interest in doing that from anybody here, but that would be one way to keep our finger on the pulse of the commissioner's offices and the policy advisors in those offices, and who I tried to meet with as much as I could, just to get to know them a little bit, so that we have that opportunity. Would be great people to be connecting with, so that and I've been asking them, you know, if you see something coming down the pipe, let us know, because the way that this commission structure works, where we meet once a month, it's hard to get meaningfully involved in something that we hear about 3 days before they vote on it. And so the more we can do to get early involvement in these things, I think the better. So if you have ideas on that, that's great. One idea could be to have a liaison for the commissioners.
Yeah, I was just going to, I stated it in the last meeting, but I just wanted to back your statement up with, especially after hearing that structure and coming out of the review process with both the commissioner and the mayor. I think that would be a very strong and very smart move on our part.
The liaison thing?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's something we can talk about. Yeah, well, yeah, we'll talk about it over the course of the next month.
I think we know who our liaison with Commissioner Fish might be.
So I can send you, there were a few documents created to sort of explain the vision, mission, sort of structure of the Public Policy Committee and its functioning. I can send that to you if that would be of interest.
At this point, I'm not sure I have that for every committee, so I guess I would ask if I could get that from every committee. So maybe we could put that on a time frame that works with everybody's schedule. That would be more helpful for me to make a decision. Because I know more than one committee's asked for me to consider their joining their committees.
Might be in the binder.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Is it?
Was it part of the
He
strategic
just
plan?
got his binder, by the way, just tonight,
My,
so.
my document was not, it was subsequent to the strategic plan.
So yeah, that would be helpful if you could send that to me. I appreciate that.
And I think Jeff was working on that recently. Didn't you send out an email for editing with
I did.
committee structures or the committee membership and?
Right, and so it's in the binder. Did I send that out to everyone else?
You asked for updates, didn't you?
Not sure.
That list actually has spots for commissioner liaisons.
There's still some blanks.
So maybe.
It's under the roster. Behind the roster.
So if that's something that could be included in that document with the rosters, just kind of a brief summary of what the committees are there for, that would be helpful.
Yeah, there were still a lot of blank spaces, so I'll send it out again, and if everyone can take a look at it, let me know. Okay. What spaces?
I don't mean to cause work for the commission, the committee leads, but
How could you?
I think that would.
Why would you want to know what the committees do?
I think that would be helpful for new members and Jeff, if there could be a simple goal statement or mission statement for each committee, and then.
Whoa, wait a minute.
No,
All right.
we have that.
Okay.
You just may not have it.
Yeah, we created these with the newly established committees, because a lot of these came out of the strategic planning process. We created work plans, or people call them different things, and mine didn't come in the form of work plan because it's dependent on findings of the Community Discovery Committee and discussions internally. But I do have some, so I'm gonna send you what I put together, and I think other leads can send.
Great,
for the-
appreciate that.
So can we just send all that to
Or
me?
to you.
Oh,
send
yeah.
it.
Because I'd like to know.
Yeah.
And then I'll make sure everyone has it.
Sorry, I didn't know you didn't have it.
Whenever I talk about myself, I assume Jeff's in that conversation, and
That's right.
vice versa, since we're both new.
Since I'm newer than John.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then I'll make sure it's given out to everybody once we get it. That's a
The
great
one
idea.
person who should have it is you.
Well, maybe. We'll see.
All right,
Keeper of all things.
we have Housing Rights Task Force next.
Hold on, wait,
So-
one more thing on the policy. So I know like you wanna get stuff from the community discovery, but I think that there's just some stuff we should put on our radar. I went to Rob Ingram's Youth Summit Against Violence.
Yeah.
They have a whole thing of policy, I kind of wrote on it, so I'll send these to you. But they have stuff from gender, cyberbullying, gang, school, sexual, police, all these different things are policy suggestions. So it's just a whole list. And something I wanted to just highlight was their work on restorative justice, which I think HRC might want to focus on, because ever since Michelle Alexander has been here, came from to talk about her book, The New Jim Crow, there's been quite a few different things happening in Portland around the corrections system, including the New Jim Crow group. I forget what the name exactly is. It's like
I went to one meeting.
yeah. What was the name?
And the New Jim Crow, something like that. They're on our organization.
Campaign to End the New Jim Crow.
Yes,
I think
sir.
it is. And so yeah, they have their mission is basically to stop the prison industrial system, and that prisons are obsolete. They probably have some policy things. I don't know if I should invite somebody from the restorative justice workshop, if I should invite somebody from that group to come and educate us about what they're doing. Also, PSU has been focusing on it highly. Like PSU's student organization, ASPSU, they're associated with a larger group called Oregon Student Association. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. And they come up with these things that they want to work on, all schools in the Pacific Northwest basically, and including Canada. And the first one was tuition equity, which is now going to get passed. It's something, the thing that they're next focusing on. Was he out? Cool. Now, what's on their radar right now is focusing on prison or corrections reform, which is to spend money wiser with corrections and to fund education in doing that. And so they probably have some solutions and policy suggestions to also bring to the table. And PSU convenes, they had a thing where there was the Chief Justice of the Oregon Supreme Court, Director of the Department of Correction, District Attorney, and 2 people from the Joint Committee on Public Safety. They had this, supposedly the vibe in the room, they had clear questions and they asked questions. The vibe in the room was very, very reform-minded, according to the Oregonian, and so maybe somebody can hear too. So,
You've been doing good representation. You've been out there.
yeah, and good stuff.
Thank you, Viola.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate that, and maybe when I send the document that sort of summarizes how the public policy committee is meant to function, that yes, we're supposed to have be responsive to the findings of the CDC, but we're also supposed to address other issues that exist outside of that. So that may fall under that, but we do have to make some decisions about capacity and what we can take on also. But I appreciate you bringing that up. Rudy Soto from NICWA was there as well. I don't know if you two connected at all. But.
I saw him.
Oh, okay, cool. So a lot of those issues are near and dear to my heart and the work I do outside of the HRC. So. But I would like to connect with you about that, if that's all right.
Yeah, I have a lot of information from it, so.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Housing rights?
Housing rights.
So the Connecting Communities of Oregon staged its rally, Housing Justice Rally, on March 14th down in Salem. About 80 people attended, largely members of CIO, CAT, JOIN, I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. But it was a very diverse group, very enthusiastic group. CIO had also scheduled that to be their legislative day. So after the rally, like I volunteered to go with them to at least one meeting with a legislator, so the individual members were able to tell their personal stories about how inclusionary zoning, might help them get housing in better locations, and then I was there to answer technical questions and things like that. So the rally was really good, and then there was a hearing on March 22nd. There were 10 people who testified. 8 of them spoke in favor of removing the ban on IZ, including all 3 of of the elected officials that testified, which included Kitty Piercy from Eugene, Greg Malinowski from Washington County, and then Jeff Reardon from, part of the legislature whose bill it is. So, so they've spoken in favor of it. The next step is to see when that committee schedules a working session on it, or a work session, whatever they call it. And hopefully after that, it gets sent to the speaker to be put up for a vote. And it gets voted on in the House and moves to the Senate. And the bill becomes law, and they make a musical about it. So that's where the IG stuff is. On the Section 8, there was a hearing on that. I wasn't involved in any of that, but it sounds like I actually have no sense of where that is right now. And we did. I don't know if everybody saw it, but the Oregonian ran an editorial basically saying discrimination is bad and it should be stopped, but don't stop it this way. And
that's too hard.
Yeah, it's too hard. And so there have been responses that have been in the Oregonian to that, and then Kyle drafted a response, which I don't know if that's gone out yet.
Yep, it went out. You and I drafted the response. It's going to appear in the Oregonian, one of the Oregonian blogs tomorrow. Send that to Kyle.
And our response, Kyle basically took the Oregonian to task for this whole, well, it's a burden on landlords and ending discrimination might, cost money or stuff like that, which is, as Kyle pointed out to me, is, it's an age-old argument against any of our civil rights laws, that this is somehow going to, wreck the capitalist system, yet somehow we're still standing here. And then the portion that I drafted just talked about how, this is hard work, and we all need to be committed to it. We all need to have patience, and we all need to sacrifice. And so now is the opportunity for the landlords to join us in exhibiting these qualities. So we'll see what happens with that. But so that's where IZ and Section 8 stand at the moment.
And will you just make sure that you guys are understanding, or at least the policy committee, and I'm going to be a part of policy committee, but I mean, this is an important, I think, policy issue that we can get involved in, and we have allies in the city, and I think that's good. So let's make sure that we're working together on that. All right. Christine, do we have communications?
No.
No? Okay. Do we have anything else? Human Trafficking Task Force. Damon, you want to do Human Trafficking Task Force?
No.
Okay. Human Trafficking Task Force, we've continued, our real outreach program. I think last time we were here, we'd already met with Assistant Chief Don Henderson. That went really well. We're continuing to move toward trainings for Portland Police Bureau, which has been severely lacking, and are working on the tuition assistance or tuition waiver for victims of trafficking. What did you have something else?
Is that the bill?
That's the bill, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, don't play it, Amy, she's not the only one doing it, she doesn't like it when you do.
It's a joint effort, yes,
yeah.
that domestic harm, but it is the bill.
So you want me to say a little quick thing about that?
Do you have an update? Okay.
Actually, I could go to Amy, wise to get. Yeah.
There's what? So, where'd that go? Okay. Sorry. Everybody needs to go, I think. But one announcement is that the Yom HaShoah program, which is the reading of the names in remembrance of victims of the Holocaust, is on Monday, April 8th, which is I think next Monday actually. if you're interested in participating in that, I know that they've had a waiting list in the past for people who actually will read the names. They give you a list of names and you, for 10 minutes, read them. I'm gonna be doing it. I'm sure Dante is gonna be doing it.
I did it last year.
Yeah, it's really powerful and really meaningful to a lot of people who will come and sit there all day and listen to this. And so if anybody's interested in doing that, it's through the Oregon Holocaust Resource Center, and you can email them and request to be put on the list to read the names. I would recommend doing that tomorrow if you're gonna do it, because they, I'm sure, have slots filled up. If not, you know, or they'll be filling up those slots quickly.
The
So-
ceremony starts at 10 and the readings will continue until 5.
Right, it's all day long. So, and if you can't make it, or if you can't do the reading and you just have an opportunity to stop by and have a seat and just listen for a few minutes, that, I think it's just really meaningful to a lot of the people that are involved.
It
So,
will be Pioneer Square.
Pioneer Square. Yep. Anything else from anyone? Okay, well, thank you. Sorry about
Thank you.
letting this go so long today. But we are adjourned.